Hey, on page 440, we're dealing with 13.6, which is travel expenses. Which means sometimes if you are the business owner and you want to make sure that your employees are better at what they do, you might send them to a conference or send them somewhere to learn how to do things better. Okay? The school has sent me a couple different places. One time I went to Duluth a couple years ago for a hockey thing. And then this coming summer I'm going to Minneapolis for a leadership thing that I'm on. Okay? So what is involved in that particular thing? So to figure out the total travel expenses, 440.
441.
The first thing that we got to figure out is cost of transportation. Okay, transportation could be a number of different things. Could be with a vehicle, could be with a plane, whatever. Okay, but that's your cost of transportation is one thing. What we do at the school, or what it is done, is that we use what they call the state rate, and what it is like 50. I think it's 55 cents a mile right now, or 54, or something like that. And so what you do is you take how many miles you had to drive there and back, and multiply it by that 55 cents or 54 cents or whatever it is, and that's how much you get reimbursed for mileage. Okay. What happens when you go on a conference like that and you have to travel? They do not give you the money up front. Usually that means what they do is that you have the employee pay for it and then submit receipts showing what they spent. And then that way you can reimburse them off of that. The next one that you'd have to figure in is also the cost of lodging. What does lodging mean?
Living. Or like sleeping.
Sleeping. Your hotel. Okay? Stuff like that. That is where you're going to sleep, your hotel room, stuff like that. That's cost of lodging. The next one would be cost of meals. That's pretty self-explanatory. And the last one is any additional costs that may occur. Which additional costs, for instance, if we go to a conference and we're doing this for a school function, they will pay for our registration for the conference. So therefore, when I go to this one in June in Minneapolis, they're paying I think it's $200-300 for the cost of the conference. Okay, so they're paying for that for me to go there. All right. So the additional costs could be registration, things like that. Cost of transportation, we're going to have to probably multiply a little bit. Cost of lodging, we might have to multiply a little bit, but then other than that, it's basically adding. So if you look at number one on the middle of page 441. It says the cost of transportation is $476. The cost of lodging was $219. The cost of meals was $147.80. And the additional cost was $89. How much did it cost to send that person? So when you add those together, what do you get? $931.80. So, is it expensive to send people to places?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. Okay, the other time when I went to Duluth for that one, that's a 4-day thing, so that was 4 nights, and there was no break on the hotel, so it was like $400 just in hotel, plus the mileage and meals. It ended up being about $1,000. And Duluth was drivable. It's not where you're going to conferences in Vegas where they'd pay for your plane ticket or anything like that. When you look at 2 through 7, it says the miles traveled, and then it gives you the rate on the next column. So on number 2, when it says that T. Willis went 48 miles, in order to get the 1536, it says transportation cost at 32 cents a mile. What they did for that number was they take 48 times 0.32. That's how they came up with the $15.36. So when you're looking at the chart, that's what and how they got it. They took the number of miles and they multiplied it by that 32 cents. For me, when I went to Duluth that summer, I think at that time the state rate was 50 cents a mile. So I took the amount of miles it was from here to Duluth and back, and times it by 50 cents, and that's how much I got reimbursed for mileage. Then the meals part of it is $27.80, and the hotel room was $65.48. The only numbers that you add are those three there. You do not include the miles traveled. Okay? You do not include the miles traveled when you're doing that, so that number does not get included in the total cost. So when you add those together, for number 2, what do you get?
$108.
108 and 64 cents. Are you guys okay with that chart?
Yeah.
All right.
What do you mean? So we just, the 48 times the 0.3, you get 50, but you just add from that?
Yes, and then you add from there. Then when you turn the page, number 8 says Thomas has airfare of $488. And here's the part where you also have to multiply. Hotel is 3 nights, bless you, at $174.50 each. Here's what most people screw up. When it says 3 nights at $174.50 each, most people put $174.50, and that's not right. What's $174.50 times 3?
523.5.
523.5. That's how much it costs for the hotel
Oh, bam.
or lodging. The meals was $117.45, and I'm also going to pay for the registration for you to go to the conference. How much is it when you add them all together?
$1,403.95.
$1,403.95. That's number 8.
So that's where it just said occasional multiplying and adding.
An occasional multiplying, but most of the time adding, yes. The only time, like if it were to say, Kayla, like that one was airfare was $488, so that must be a, flying to Vegas or flying to Denver or something like that. If it's drivable, like when I go to Minneapolis, they're not going to pay for me to fly to Minneapolis. It's going to be where they pay for me to go there via vehicle. So it'll be 50, I think the state rate now is like 54 cents a mile. So the amount of miles it is from Minot to Minneapolis and Minneapolis to Minot, I add those numbers together, so that's my total miles driven, and then times it by 54 cents, and that's how much I get for that.
Okay, that's easier.
Now, one of the things that could happen is if you have a company car, like if you are big enough to have a company vehicle,
Okay.
then you might send that employee in the company vehicle, and then you wouldn't pay them mileage because they're not putting miles on their vehicle, they're putting miles on the company's vehicle. So they wouldn't probably get that. They'd have to be reimbursed for like their gasoline, but they wouldn't be paid a mile thing. When I went to Duluth a couple summers ago, I drove my own pickup, so therefore that's why I got reimbursed. If I would have taken the school Suburban or something like that, then I wouldn't have been reimbursed for the mileage. Okay? So, what do you guys think of this?
Easy.
Are you guys okay with it?
Great job.
All right. So on page 441
1 to 9.
to 442, 1 through 12.
Right?
Now you got to learn about Philip. He worked in Fargo. He